Hi everyone, welcome to another beautiful autumn day in Poland. It's actually Sunday today, but I'm still walking to work because I have to rescue Carolina for something. I hope that you're having a great day so far. Now, people often ask me about my sexuality on this channel, which is interesting because it's funny, I haven't really spent much time dealing with what that might be, but everybody that I've dated has been women or girls, and I find women and girls most attractive. So I suppose make of that what you will, I guess. But I want to tell you about one particular ex-girlfriend of mine, just to kind of set the scene for this particular video that I'd like to make today. Now, I had a girlfriend and she was British, her parents were British, but she just happened to be black as well. And we dated for a while. She was actually the last girlfriend I had before I left the UK to start traveling and working in other countries. And I don't want to go into that relationship too much, but there was one kind of interesting anecdote that I wanted to kind of touch on. Now, we both just graduated from university and we were both looking for our first post-graduation jobs, and it was quite a struggle because we were up in Manchester, and Manchester's quite the university town, so every year you're kind of competing against thousands of other graduates for all of those very few graduate jobs. So that's one of the reasons why I left the country, basically. But I remember her looking at some kind of brochure for a black alumni society or something like this, and I was quite surprised by this because I wondered why she needed this kind of support, because it had never really occurred to me that there might still be issues with racism endemic in the country. This is the UK, it's the bastion of freedom and all of that sort of thing. So I asked her why was she applying for this, and she told me in no uncertain terms that actually she was applying, or she was seeking support through this program because she felt that she needed it, because she felt that she was facing sufficient barriers because of her race to warrant getting support from elsewhere. Now, I think it was a surprise for me to learn about my girlfriend or ex-girlfriend's issues with racism in seeking work in the UK, perhaps because I had always felt that race wasn't an issue for me. I'd maybe felt that I'd seen past that. I was seeing the person rather than the colour, so to speak. And while that's probably a good thing, and hopefully you agree, and I'm not saying this because I want to talk about what a wonderful person I am, it also had a few sort of shortcomings as well, because I was seeing the person, not the race. Maybe I was ignoring some of the issues, or I was blind to the issues that surrounded her being black in the UK. And on reflection, maybe that made me a much less supportive boyfriend than I could have been. Just want to say, walking past the largest church in my area, and big up and peace to all of my religious watchers. I'm sure God loves you as he loves me, yes? And just behind me over here, just here, there's a bunch of like radio control car enthusiasts. They've made a little track here so that they could race their cars. That's so awesome. That's so cool. That's just a bunch of grown adults charging around after their radio control cars. That's wild. This is one of the things that I quite like about living in Warsaw, is that occasionally you'll find these little groups of people in these otherwise very niche societies, and they found themselves and they're having wild times in their little groups. It's brilliant. I really like to see that sort of thing. It's wonderful. So anyway, where was I? Oh yes, being blind to certain things. So yeah, anyway, so why am I thinking about this particular tiny part of my life many years ago? Well, I don't know, I was thinking, because I had this fairly long conversation with one of my viewers. It was really interesting and I really enjoyed the conversation up to a point, and then I got quite frustrated with it. And if you want to go find this conversation, it's somewhere in, I think, the video from a few weeks ago. and it's really long, and there's something like 40 replies, so it's a long thread. And as any of you who've read my comments know, I tend to get a bit carried away with my writing, so there's a lot to read, so I wouldn't be surprised if you don't. But basically the summary was, this person had some questions. I tried to answer them as best I could based on my experience and my perspective, which is what I do. It's what I like to do here. So what were his questions? Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter to a certain extent. But what I found particularly frustrating was that, I mean, look at this view. This is amazing. Wait a second. Can you see that? It's just beautiful. Anyway, so why did I get frustrated? I got frustrated because it became quite clear quite soon, quite quickly, that this person is only ever going to see trans people as trans people. Not people first, trans first, and there was no way that he could ever get past that. He would talk about biology, he would talk about how you can't change this, and to be honest, I tried to make the point that really biology doesn't really make much of a difference when it comes to talking to people about themselves and their experiences. I'm not going to sit down and give you a breakdown of my DNA as a reference point to tell you who I am. I'm going to tell you about my history, my story, my fears, the things that I like, the things that I dislike, what I find beautiful, my favorite flavors and smells. My DNA, it's not going to tell you anything about me really, not the important stuff, to be honest. But he just couldn't let go of this, and I found that incredibly frustrating, because it's like, well, do you see yourself in those terms? Do you think that your biology trumps everything else that there is about you? And it was really I came away feeling quite sad, to be honest, because it made me realise that there are people out there who are never going to see past this for me. The first thing and the last thing they will see is Andy the trans person. Maybe trans person the Andy, I don't know. And that's really quite frustrating, because I like to think there's more to my life than that. And I mean, I know it's all I talk about on this channel, so it's quite difficult for you to understand that maybe. I talk about my job sometimes, I talk about Carolina sometimes. But I mean, you have to believe me, I'm a real person with like all sorts of foibles and problems and fears and hopes and dreams. I'm not just transgender, but for this person, that's the last thing that they would understand about me. And I found that quite sad, to be honest. Another thing that made me quite sad about this interaction was the fact that this person kept returning to very combative language, and I don't think this is particularly unusual of this particular person. I see it quite a lot of really unearned hostility directed towards me. There was a really bizarre hostile comment aimed at me in my last video about childhood, just very much like they felt that I was attacking them. And it's really interesting. I find it quite sad, because I don't want to engage people on those terms. I like to think that I'm quite fair, I'm quite nuanced, and I give people some benefit of the doubt. I give them opportunities to explain themselves. I give them space to ask questions that they might be afraid to ask elsewhere, and I try to answer them as best I can. I mean, it does mean sometimes they're going to hear answers they don't like. That's how it goes. I mean, if you're going to ask a question, you're going to have to take a bit of accountability that you might not like the answer, whatever that question is. And you just have to accept that's just how I perceive things. Doesn't make it right or wrong or true or false. That's just my perception, and you're welcome to disagree with me. However, I try to avoid that kind of combative language, but it felt very much like they were under the impression that interactions with trans people was a test, and they would jump down my throat the moment that I erred somehow. And it was incredibly unfair, and it made me quite sad again, because it just made me think, well, there's no way that I could reach this person. There's nothing I could say to change that point of view. And I mean, I'm realistic because I don't think that I can do that. I don't think that I am going to give anybody that kind of light bulb moment where they go from being one thing to the other. Suddenly they're a huge trans ally or something. I don't think that's ever going to be the case, but it would be nice to think that at least after having an interaction with me, they might suddenly be a little bit more understanding of where we're coming from. But it just made me wonder, some people just probably don't want to be reached. I think that's key, learning, as I know, because I'm an educator. First of all, you've got to want to learn, you've got to want to develop and change. And there's just a lot of people out there that don't want to do that. So I guess, I don't know, my question to everybody, the point that I'd like to make today is, what do you want from me? What do you want from us? We're not out to get you. We don't want to be center of attention. We don't want to be, or at least I don't want to be, I can't speak for everyone, of course. I don't want to be seen as a threat, because I'm not. I'm not a threat. And I'm sorry if sometimes you feel uncomfortable by looking at me, but that's not my fault. It's something that we need to have a conversation about, but it's a conversation that we need to have, not an altercation, because that doesn't help anybody. And I'm quite, open to the idea that maybe I'm being unrealistic, maybe I'm asking too much of people to think of trans people as humans first. I don't know. But also, I'm more than aware that perhaps I'm being unclear. Maybe I'm not making my point in a way that's understandable, reasonable, or fair. I don't know. Let me know. I really am open to feedback, and as you might tell, these conversations, they really make an impact on me, and they really make me think. God damn it, I managed to splash coffee all the way down me. Oh my, what's this coffee on my goddamn nose now? Jesus Christ. Right, coffee's gone. Jesus Christ. Okay, so what's the point that I want to make here? I'll just cycle back to the little anecdote that I told you at the start of this video. And I suppose this is a request to anyone who sees themselves as allies out there in the world, because I'm just one woman out here trying to do my best to spread the idea that trans people aren't a threat to others. It'd be really awesome if other people could support us with that, support me with that. If you see something, it's easy to miss, it's easy to not spot when these questions are being asked, when there are people out there who are saying things that need to be responded to, let's say. It'd be awesome if you could do that for me, because I can't respond to everything, and it feels very much like it's me versus them, and it's not. I don't think it is. I think for most people it's self-evident that we are human, but it'd be great if others could remind some certain people that this is the case. Anyway, I'll leave it there because I need to sort out my coat. It's covered in coffee. I need to finish this goddamn coffee because I have a suspicion it's going to ruin the rest of my day. And I hope to see the rest of you later on. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.